The Samsung Galaxy S8 is definitely going to be a turning point in the way that phones are designed in the future. This is the first time we've seen a flagship phone that's got so little bezel. It's basically all screen, and while, you know, the specs themselves aren't that different, this is a phone that's going to be a real innovation turning point. This is a really high spec, really premium performance phone, but it's got a very high price. Samsung is saying to Apple, you know what, you can charge a lot for your phones, we're going to do the same thing too. So in terms of raw power, the Samsung Galaxy S8 is one of the most powerful phones ever created. As you can see by our Geekbench scores, which checks out how powerful the CPU can perform. In terms of multi-core, the raw power, it's among the best scores we've ever seen on the device. In terms of single core, where you've got your more basic day-to-day apps, this is where the iPhone shines and Samsung still hasn't quite beaten that. But in terms of out-and-out raw power, the Samsung Galaxy S8 is the best we've seen. However, in day-to-day use, do you really need that much power? If you're opening, for instance, a really high-intensity graphical game, most phones can do that pretty well already. You don't need this much raw power day-to-day, so really, this feels like Samsung hitting a spec for the sake of it. There are three ways to unlock the Samsung Galaxy S8. Firstly, you've got the fingerprint scanner. It's no longer here at the bottom, it's on the rear of the phone. Unfortunately, just a little bit out of reach. While the fingerprint scanner is rapid, it's just too hard to use day to day and you have to move the phone around a little bit too much in your hand. And the next one is the iris scanner. So a quick swipe will open up the iris screen. Not a fan of this because you have to open your eyes quite wide to make sure it's accurate, although when it does work, it is rapid. The third version is facial recognition, which we'd say you can just completely ignore because A, it's not as secure, can be spoofed with a photo of your face, and in low light situations in the dark, just does not work. One of the features we're enjoying about top-end smartphones at the moment is stereo speakers, so either having one at the top and at the bottom or one below the screen itself. Samsung's gone for just a single firing speaker at the bottom, and you could say, well, what does that matter? Why do we need multiple speakers on phones? But it is quite a nice feature to have, whether you're watching movies and having sound firing forwards, or when you're listening in the kitchen while making dinner. Having a decent speaker does make a difference nowadays, and while Samsung hasn't done anything particularly wrong, it doesn't feel like it's really pushing at the sharp end of smartphone design. I really don't understand what Samsung's doing by having Bixby on the phone this early on. By having a dedicated Bixby button on the side, it's basically saying this is a key feature of the phone. But what we've got just doesn't make a lot of sense. You've got Bixby Home, which is a fairly attractive screen on the side of the home screen, telling you important information, giving you key updates in a kind of Google Now Cards way. But things like Bixby Vision, which uses the camera to work out what it's looking at, or Bixby Reminders, just don't make a lot of sense. And with no voice recognition at the moment, and possibly not coming to the UK for much later, it's hard to see what Samsung's doing by having this on the phone so early on and making a big deal out of it. It just feels a bit like bloatware right now and something for the future. In terms of the battery life, Samsung's whacked a 3000 mAh power pack in here, which is the same as the Galaxy S7. Now, it did worry us a little bit at the start because this screen is longer, but with the Exynos processor, or Qualcomm in the US, it seems to be fine. You're getting a really good battery life out of this, although it's not going to last perhaps 2 days under one charge. You will get easily to the end of the day, so if you're getting home from work, you should have enough power to last you through the entire evening. In terms of the camera, Samsung's stuck with the 12 megapixel sensor that it had last year. It's slightly upgraded, but ultimately the specs are very similar. When you look at the side, the phone itself, the camera sensor is flush to the back of the phone. There's no unsightly camera bump, so when you've got it on a desk, it's not wiggling around. In terms of the camera quality, well, it seems very similar to last year, but Samsung had one of the best camera phones on the market, so that's no bad thing. In terms of the tweaks, we have noticed that it's slightly better in low light, but as a result, some of the pictures are a little bit overexposed. So ultimately, you're getting very quick, very clear, very sharp snaps, but some of them can have a little bit too much light bleed. I mean, one of the main reasons you'd buy this phone is for the screen. It's just, I mean, it's stunning. The fact that it's got this new infinity display design that means it curves around the edges of the phone means it looks completely different to anything else you can buy on the market right now. And one of the favourite things I like doing with it is just watching films, because by having those black bars at the side taken away, everything feels that much more immersive. It just feels like a phone from the future rather than just another black rectangle that we're used to seeing. In terms of the design of the phone, Samsung's done really well here because, again, everything's curving really nicely away and it feels very rounded, it feels very futuristic, and in the hand it feels light as well. So basically it's a phone that you'd expect to be paying this much money for, and while it is expensive, the design does kind of justify the price. One of the downsides of having an elongated screen like this means it's harder to hold and use day to day. If you want to go to anything in the top left-hand corner of the phone, it's very difficult. You've got to jiggle it around in your palm quite a lot, which means you could drop it, which is always a worry when you've got a phone of this expense. Should you buy this phone? Well, there's one reason and one reason only, and that is the infinity display. It's a real turning point in the way that phones are manufactured and designed, and Samsung is basically decimating anything else any other phone manufacturer has on the market right now. But with that screen does come a very high cost, so you have to be sure you want to pay this much money for a phone of this quality. Now, in terms of the screen, you can go bigger. You could go for the Galaxy S8 Plus, and we've got a couple of videos for you on that. You can compare it to the Galaxy S8, or you can see how long the battery will last in our in-depth test. As ever, we want to hear from you. Let us know in the comments below if this is the phone you're going to buy or if Samsung's gone completely crazy. As ever, thank you for liking, thank you very much for subscribing, and keep it locked to Tech Radar because we bring you the phones you want to see.